definitely have it. You can have whatever.
Who wants to like roll the intro?
I can.
Okay.
All right, let's get into it.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Creatives POV podcast. I'm Ethan,
I'm Marquis.
Noah.
and today we have a special guest. Noah, introduce our guest for us.
Yes, we have Liv Hunt with us today.
Hello.
She is a really talented Webflow developer and designer. And I met Liv through Precious pretty much, right? Mm-hmm. And through Seth. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how you met Liv.
Yeah.
And Marquis, this is your first time meeting Liv.
Well,
probably, right?
we was trying to figure that out when she came in. We was both like, we've seen each other. So.
I think so. Maybe at the old space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just start off with giving the people a proper introduction. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Liv Hunt. I'm originally from Fairfield, Iowa, so southeast a bit. Went to Iowa State, knew I wanted to do business, marketing, kind of jumped into advertising a couple of years in and then realized I love design, but it was too late. So was just lucky to kind of get some bootleg Creative Cloud from my friends, hung out with a bunch of designers, and they kind of took me in. So, yeah, it's kind of how I got started into design. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what school did you go to for?
Yeah. So I went to Iowa State.
Okay.
Yep. And then I was in the College of Business and then kind of jumped into like journalism, like mass communications, advertising was over there. And then I found out like way over here, the College of Design was like a whole concept, like a whole thing that I was missing out on.
Yeah.
So yeah,
What was your college experience like?
it was cool. I feel like I got set up in the right area, knowing that I had affinities for marketing, advertising. And I think I just kind of arrived there. I feel like I'm always like arriving on my own sweet time to a lot of things. So for me to, figure out design like a couple of years in, you got to start somewhere. So it was fun. It was cool. I was doing always like design on the side, whether that was like for free or, smaller budget things. So it was really nice to be able to start into kind of being a designer professionally when I was still in school. Yeah.
What kind of like drew you into design in the first place? Like, have you always grown up into that since you were a kid, or like?
Yeah, like I remember trying to like take whiteout to like a Cabbage Patch Kids birth certificate. Like I was always trying to like modify documents or like make fake documents or like take paper and like put coffee stains on it so it would look like, ancient text.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so I think I always just kind of loved magazines and like layout design, just kind of like gravitating towards that. I just think I didn't know that it was a thing that you could do and get paid money. Mm-hmm. I didn't like growing up in a small town, it's pretty rural, and you've got like a sign shop and maybe like a screen printer, but the idea that like someone is responsible for like the design of something, something that's so key, but then also like so subconscious a lot of the time. So I think that's kind of, I was always doing these design and ad like newspaper contests and just like winning every year. It was so fun. But just the idea of like, what's the main message and who are we speaking to and, what value can we provide for them? So I've always been a little creative business nerd.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where it started for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the big takeaways from your like college experience that you still apply to your life now? Is there any? Or like, what are your thoughts on education as a whole?
Was it worth it?
Yeah. This is a really big and loaded and deep question. I think what I benefited the most out of from college was crossing paths with tons of different people with tons of different perspectives from like all over the world. I think that to me was the biggest thing, growing up in like small town Iowa, like Walmart is like the connection you have to culture on like a higher level, like pre-internet. But I think just like meeting other people and working with other people and I think that was the key thing because it was definitely everything outside of the coursework, I would say, that was really beneficial to me. Just because when you kind of make your own career and you find your own niche thing, it's not really cookie cutter. Like I went to school to be an accountant and now I'm an accountant. I think in the creative world and the design world, and especially with like new tech and like no code and web development, by the time you start college and graduate college, like technology is changing all the time so fast. So I don't know that like any sort of degree could like accurately prepare you for it. So, yeah, I think it just like opening up my world was kind of the big thing.
Are you happy you got the degree you got?
Yeah, like just kind of, and that's how I roll with things. I'm not going to think of too much about what I could have done differently because at the time I didn't know any other way. But I think it would be interesting, like if I did go through the design core program, how that would have landed things. But then also everything makes so much sense that I'm with, web development. It's kind of, I don't know, structured, rigid, nerdy. So I feel like it kind of makes sense in retrospect that I ended up where I ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your first job experience in development and design after college?
After college, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a copywriter or a designer. I had like my eyes on these big agencies like Leo Burnett and, just always constantly talking on the phone with people that were Iowa State alums, whether they were in LA or they were in Chicago or they were in Minneapolis. I was just like a magician with cold calling people. And as a student, people would kind of give me the time of day. So, what you think you're capable of before you have that real experience, and you can do a food truck, you can do a restaurant, you can have design experience, but like nothing's going to prepare you for the reality that is just a full-time job. Like a lot of it is like the hours. I think in class, you can go home, take a nap. Your day is built a little bit different. And so I think, just it could be also, overwhelming, but then also like devastating because I feel like college is so we could do whatever we want. Like we can change the world and like you totally can. But sometimes when you get out there and you're on the ground level and you're seeing everything in detail, it can be so, bummer, it's not that like forward momentum that you have in college so much. And a little bit more, wild, wild west. Yeah. So I think it's what you do with that feeling of like expansiveness and overwhelmingness and reality. So, I think I lost the point of the question.
No, I think you.
Yeah. What was my first job?
Your first job. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know if I wanted to be a writer or a designer, and people were like, "You gotta know that by now," and I didn't. So I ended up, for fear of like moving home, I ended up cold calling someone that worked at Hy-Vee headquarters. Des Moines is like big insurance, like food. You think about like the main companies are here and like what you could possibly do as an entry level designer. So my contact there ended up letting me know that they were hiring for a graphic designer. So that same day we went out for coffee, and then later that day I went in for an interview. And I was like, yeah, this is absolutely cool. They signed me on as a graphic designer, and I was so just lucky to get a gig with having no experience. I think that it can be very scary and very rough. So I think it's important to kind of keep your mind open that any experience is a lot of time good experience, and it's going to take a lot of time before you really get into, your super niche of knowing yourself and what you're good at. So yeah.
That's good. That's a good perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then after Hy-Vee, because like now you're like, are you full-time self-employed?
Yeah. So now I'm full-time freelance. After Hy-Vee, I knew I wanted to work in an agency environment. Advertising, when I learned it was a thing, it just like rocked my world. So after I think like 4 years at Hy-Vee, I started looking for an agency gig, and an agency called ZLR Ignition. They were hiring a production designer. And I really had like this chip on my shoulder, like I wanted to be an art director. But I was like, this is experience. This is like a foot in the door. You could see how it goes. So I ended up taking the job at an agency, and then I was there for like another 5 years before I went full-time freelance, which is what I'm doing now.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do you like being full-time freelance now?
It's really like everything that I've ever wanted. I think I wouldn't have been able to verbalize how it ended up being any other time previously. Like, I don't think I would have been able to predict the way that things would have unfolded for me. It's this like right thing of like, knowing yourself and like knowing what you need in a work environment. And yeah, just like when are you most creative and what goes into that? Cause I think sometimes like more time off and more work-life balance can be really beneficial to creative people, which is exactly opposite of what most of the world and like a lot of like hustle culture is like telling you. So yeah, it's really amazing. It's just like a perfect balance for me of, like working super hard, but then also not getting burned out. I struggled with that like a lot in my past. And so to kind of get over that is really a really great thing because it's like exhausting, to be like super dramatic about, what you do for a living. It's like, well, everybody's, so to get the right alignment of like, I'm liking what I'm doing and it's working well for me, it could take some time.
How long have you been a freelancer so far?
So I feel like you were going to ask me this question and I was like, I should look at LinkedIn so I can talk about dates, but I definitely didn't. So I think it's been about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. About 2 years. Yeah. Since I've been freelance and, I saved up some money and I quit my job, and I kind of quit my job because I was like mentally just like super burned out. And so, when you can't give your best creative product, that's not cool for anyone involved. So, I just kind of like quit and I was like, this is kind of wild. I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do. I think I had intentions of freelancing. I had a couple smaller contract like things like lined up with like friends, like, hey, we'll cut you in on this many hours of design for a couple months. So I think that provided a really safe on-ramp for me. And when I first started out, I was like, I can do anything. I can do photo. I can do just using all the skills that I have, necessarily knowing that like that would create a safer space for me financially. So it's cool to know that like you just do what you can and then you find out what works and then you can kind of like get closer into your niche, which is where I feel like I'm at now. I was getting super snarky, I would say, anytime I had to do a video shoot, and then it was just like, I can't the patience of editing from here and there and like taking care of your gear. I'm a little bit more like run and gun, like just like reckless with it, which is not something that camera people want to hear. Like that's just not a thing. So I think just riding the waves of like, I don't really like doing this, or like, why do I feel that way about that shoot? And like taking all of that as like information to like better redirect, what can you make money and feel good doing? Because there's no like right or wrong answer. It's just all going to be based on your individual experience and like where you're coming from. And so, yeah.
What was your introduction to web development then?
Yeah. So I was doing like PowerPoints. PowerPoints are notoriously hard to work in and like super ugly. But I love that area of like functional and beautiful, like both things. Cause there's like super beautiful things that, it just looks cool and that's it. It's not like something, I don't know, to believe in. But yeah, I was doing PowerPoints and had a branding project. Was working with Seth, was working with Dylan. They were doing the brand identity, the logo development, and it was time for the website. And the client was very, open about Squarespace or Webflow or whatever. And I had just, come off of a Squarespace project. And like, if you want to build a custom Squarespace, it involves like a lot of code. And so it was just like, don't do that. Like, don't put yourself through that again. My buddy Corey was like, I'll help you along the way. Like, you should just try it. Like, if it's a client that trusts you in this way, like, just try it, just do it. And so that's really the first time that I did web development. And it was so fantastically easy once I got involved with it. once you kind of learn how the framework works, you're not like inventing new rules all the time. If you want to stay in the allotted rules, ultimately that's going to make your website faster, make your code cleaner, just all along like the lines of like proper web development. It's just great. So I think for me, I can get super overwhelmed with like possibility and like I just get excited about stuff and just like we're like on a floating rock. Like this is all so crazy. So I think just like the confines of rules in web development and like consistencies and global classes, it's kind of like this like peaceful thing for me in that I could be creative, but it has a lot of like framework.
That's a good perspective because I think as creatives, we can always be like, we need to think outside the box and then you can burn yourself out by trying too hard to think about, you know, something new when really it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it, you know?
Totally. I think I used to also think, you know, being an art director is like being a cool creative and then being, you know, a web developer is like uncool in some way. But it's just been so fun, like getting to know myself and like, you know, like acceptance of like all of the parts of yourself and just being like, whoa, like this is a perfect combination of like money and like nerdiness, you know, and it just like, it takes everybody. Like you need somebody to do the logo, but you also need somebody to design the website, but you also need somebody to develop the website. And so just kind of like owning your spot wherever you are on that big, giant, you know, creative, collaborative thing. And then just rocking it out in your spot. Cause it takes everybody, you know, I think there's this idea that you're alone and especially in freelancing, like you're going to go out and you're going to be working from your home, isolated completely. But that's so like simply like not true because you're always going to have you and then you're going to have your client. And even if that feels isolating to you, like just depending on what kind of projects you're on, like once you find cool people that you enjoy working with and collaborating and like you have fun working together and you do super good work, that's when you kind of realize like, okay, it's not like an alone thing. It's not an isolated thing. And like, I realize we can do so much more like together than we can like alone. So that's just been totally huge is working with other people that specialize in like the things that you don't. And then together you guys can just deliver something super awesome. I've just done way too many projects where I was like, yeah, like I can do everything. And that's fine, but that's so extremely like taxing and exhausting. And I think sometimes it's great to have multiple perspectives in there. You know, hey, did you think about what if it was like this? Or I have a weird brain and like sometimes I read the same document somebody else does and I'm picking up something different. And so just like in doing due diligence for the people that are going to receive your creative product on the other end, are you, you know, working with other people to make sure that like your perspective isn't siloed, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing.
That's good. And so, yes, Webflow is your tool of choice, right?
Yeah. So my buddy Corey Moen, he is just super Webflow fanatic.
Shout out Corey.
Shout out Corey.
Podcast alum.
Yeah. Corey and Max, they have this thing called No Code Supply Co. Basically, Corey's created this CSS framework. So you use this framework, you can duplicate, like it's a template kind of in Webflow to kind of get going. So he has all this documentation alongside of it that tells you step by step how to start and build this entire thing. And yeah, I just kind of like never looked back. It just was such a cooler, higher quality custom product that I could deliver in such a short timeline. The pixel perfectness was so good for me because with, you know, building in Squarespace and things like that, I'm not dunking on Squarespace. It's super great. But like sometimes you have to settle, you know, whether that's like a couple pixels or whatever, like you always have to make some sort of settle. And to me as a creative person, like that can, I don't want to ever settle. Like I want to make something that's super awesome. I'm going to think about it forever. So just that ability to create something exactly as I want it, is super empowering. Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay. So, what are some of the clients that you work with? And is there a specific type of client that you enjoy the most? Because it's like,
Yeah.
it's work, right? So, it's like, I'm sure you take on jobs that
Yeah.
help you pay the bills and are
Totally.
like good for you financially. But then there's probably other jobs that you're like, oh, I really want to do this, you know?
Yeah. So I think it kind of breaks down a couple ways. Sometimes you're working directly with someone who owns a business, someone who's an entrepreneur, someone who is totally busy doing their creative gift, their craft, and they've got to the point where they're saying, okay, it's going to be more worth my time to invest in someone who's an expert in doing what they're doing to build this for me. So a lot of times, like, you're working directly with someone who's founded a business, or if not, their marketing person who's the middle person between you and them. So, that's really an ideal situation. It's really great. I feel like in those instances, you're not working with someone who's also in branding and marketing and design. So sometimes you got to be aware of, are you speaking in this really high level nerdy language? And do you need to like explain, not like talk down to them, but like it's really important, I think, to be sure like you're communicating effectively to them, because it could be embarrassing when you have to stop a conversation a bunch of times and say like, hey, can you tell me what that means, because I have no idea. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And then I'd say another level of people that we're working with is other design studios, advertising agencies, small independent groups or freelancers of 2 or 3 that work together. And they don't do Webflow. And so they'll do a brand identity, they'll do a big campaign. But when it comes down to the web development, it's a really specialized thing. So especially, the Webflow community around the world is super awesome. You can witness that on like LinkedIn and Twitter. The Webflow community in the Midwest, the Webflow community in Des Moines. So I'm very passionate about like, this is like how accessible it is to get into no code web development, how empowering it is to be able to build really awesome, high functioning websites for people. I'm trying to, communicate that in the Midwest, like in Des Moines specifically, like you can do so much better than Squarespace, and like to cut through the clutter, not only like at a local level, but on the internet. Like it doesn't matter where you're based if you're able to like tell your story and showcase your product or what you do or your services in a really high level way. And so that's so much what I love about Webflow development, is doing something that matters. There's just so many like templated snooze websites, and the world functions on like ugly websites. Like the world works like on ugly websites because it's like they just need to function. And everything's moving so quickly all the time. I think it's a really big investment. But I think the cool part about, no code and Webflow is that like it's shorter development timelines. You're working with me as a developer. I'm not like a whole team of a bunch of people. So we can be quick and agile and, make something fairly quickly and, evolve it over time rather than have it be, door closed, aging website. See you never.
Yeah. So, how often do you? I guess this is a 2-part question.
Yeah.
So, like, first part, how long does it take you, like, to usually, create a website for someone? And then the second part of the question is, how often do you like update or make changes to their websites?
Yeah. So I think timing is all going to depend on how many pages are in your website. I'd say on the low end, you can just start with the landing page. Maybe you have an idea for your brand. You want to start collecting emails. You got the colors and you have the fonts, but you're not ready for other things. But like, as you guys know, like a link in bio and Instagram, like it's important to have an online presence, and get your Google Analytics going and stuff like that. So, you could start with just like a simple landing page. You could do like a 5-page website, or you could do like a 15 to 20-page website. So I would say the timing all depends on where you're at scale wise. But process wise, you're always going to start with like a sitemap. Not even pretty design world cool, like diagram world cool. Like what's the nav have? You don't want to have an overwhelming navigation bar where people don't know. You need to think about the hierarchy of information, and you need to think about like the user experience and getting people to the information that they want like as quickly as possible with like very little to no resistance. Just like search engine optimization, you know, you got people in the search bar of Google. So you want to like build that pathway like as short and as most effective as possible. So that comes down to, you know, the words that are in the H1 headline that start out your website. All of it is so like robot-y kind of. So yeah, starting with the sitemap and really thinking about what information is going on what sections on what pages. And then it gets super nerdy. Then you're thinking about like the content management system. So the flow of information. So I think everybody's interacted with like a contact form on a website where you're like, Noah, last name, email. So those exist because on the back end, you have a developer saying, this is a collection of information and these are the pieces of information that we want to collect. So then you're thinking about, okay, how can I build this so tags are flowing right? So if I choose like agriculture on your website, all of the agriculture case studies flow in together. So you're really thinking about smart from a content management perspective, smart from an SEO perspective, smart from a user perspective. And that's just the sitemap. So then like that's like the framework for your
This is
website.
fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so
intense.
yeah, so depending on like timelines and how urgent the website's needed, like a lot of that thinking really upfront. So then your decisions aren't because I felt like it. Your decisions are because XYZ, you know, the most logical build because you want to build something that is clean and someone else who has no idea what they're doing could pick it up. So yeah. And then like after the sitemap, then comes the web design. Sometimes I'm doing the web design. Sometimes I'm just doing the web development. It can be really overwhelming to do all of it together. So I really like to work with other people.
So there is a difference there.
There's a huge difference. Yeah. So the design, the way that it looks, you know, what could be, and then on the other side of it there is like the development and like what's possible, and I've worked in a lot of environments where you know it's like an older web system and there's a lot of well it can't be this way because of this, and if you've worked with web developers sometimes you're like damn, like you just like, no, you like wreck all my dreams. Like you hurt all my dreams because I can't do this, because I can't do this. And sometimes designers are, so there's this balance of like creativity, what could we do? But then there's also like, this is a functioning system that needs to work well and it needs to make sense. I think brands like Apple, you know, we don't even think about things like, you don't have to tell people to tap on something to get this. Like everything is so intuitive. And so it's like being the next step ahead and like anticipating what someone might be needing next in their web experience and then giving that to them. So like doing the thinking for them. So it just be like people, we don't want people to think about the experience that they're having on their website. They just want to be like, damn, that was awesome. I got what I needed quickly. And they thought about that. That was like really smart. So yeah, kind of a difference between design and development, but really I think is like you just have to draw a hard line there, because as a designer and the developer, it's great because I'm using like both sides of my brain here, but I think it could be sometimes overwhelming because, you know, designer me is like, well, what if it was like this? And then developer me was like, that, you know, that's not the smartest way to build that, you know? And so when I can go back and forth between those, it can take a lot of time. But when it's someone else's design that's been signed off and approved, then I'm just up to create this pixel perfect, like replica of it. So like going back to like making fake documents when I was a kid, it's just like, it's this cool satisfaction of like bringing something to life in like a Frankenstein kind of way. That, you know, most people don't even think about, because you're just like, I need a designer, give me a website. But it's interesting how there's so many different steps into it. So
sounds like the priority whenever you approach something like a project is like the functionality and like the userness of it is probably the highest priority, would you say?
yeah, for me specifically, yeah. I've been realizing it's like, oh, you know, I have a brother who's an engineer and like a sister who's a scientist and another sister who's like bilingual, trilingual. And I've always kind of been like, oh, you're like the art person or whatever. But when I'm getting into like the framework of how a website should function, and that's so important. It's not only thinking about how the website should function, it's like what's our top of mind, what are our goals as a business, and what, action do we need on our website to indicate success or to measure success. And so, it's kind of,
So whenever you're taking into account the functionality of the user, is there like kind of a bridge to bridge the gap between like functionality between like building it? Because I'm assuming sometimes you hand these projects off and the maintenance is no longer in your hands.
Okay, yeah.
So like how does that work with like functionality of like we want this to be like the user to have a great experience, but also whoever does the maintenance or the upkeep of the site also have like a good experience doing that.
So I think that's kind of one of the beautiful things about Webflow is how powerful it is and empowering for clients who use that as a platform, and that we're going to build it in your workspace, your Webflow workspace. You're going to invite me in as a guest collaborator. And so you are always going to have the keys to the castle. I don't own your website. If something goes wrong with your website, whatever, I am not a gatekeeping you from your own property. Like you own that.
Yeah.
I think my biggest thing about like setting people up for success is like thinking, how are they going to use their website? How's the client going to use their website? And so like, that's why the content management system comes into play. And that's like how a blog works. And so for anything on your Webflow website, whether that's like t-shirts that have information about who printed it, what blank it's on, all that stuff. It's just like, it's all based on a content management system that you could pop open and say, hey, I want to do a new post. And then you as like the client, the user maintaining the website, you're just entering information into this content management system and pressing save. So you don't have to be overwhelmed with actively working in the design or trying to figure out what was going on the development side. Ultimately, what I do is set you up so that you have a safe area where you can continue to update your website over time. So
That's just the beauty of no code, right?
Yeah,
That's just
totally.
kind of what it boils down to.
Yeah. I mean, for like me as a developer, but then like the client that has the website too, like they have a clean, mean, lightweight functioning machine, not having tons of plugins or having to worry about like updates or really like management of your website, not from a content perspective, is like a non-issue. A lot of times a client might come back later on, hey, we're ready to add a blog. Can you scope out what it would be like to add a blog? And then we'll add that on, maybe, an occasional update. But for the most part, I think that's what's so awesome about Webflow is that, it just like allows that like matching with the modern world right now where you don't have like always have a big retainer client for like so many years. Like, we're working with each other on an as needed efficiency, effectiveness basis, because we don't ever want stuff to be watered down. I think working with intention and making sure like this is what you want to achieve and we're helping you achieve that. Like, I think that just like staying fresh with that is like the huge thing. So, Webflow being pretty hands off and not needing a lot of maintenance in the long term just like kind of fits right in with that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So you sent me a link to your portfolio and I looked it over. And
Yeah.
It was awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
So you had like several different projects on there. So like, tell us about a couple of those. Like, which one's your favorite? Like, I saw that you did some work for the skate park downtown.
Yeah.
Like, is it Shaft Agency?
Yeah, Shaft. Yeah.
Yeah, Shaft.
Yeah.
And then Coffee Black.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, tell us about some of these projects.
Yeah. So I think the Lordson skate park, I had a friend that I used to work with in like a past life. And she was, she's with Polk County Conservation. And technically the skate park is a park. So they needed to do like update the shirts. They wanted to do shirts that were gonna like sell both for people that are tourists passing by, fans of skate, maybe they're in town for like something like Do Tour, but then also people that use the skate park, it's part of their lives as well. I think skate merch like is a really cool thing. Like skate culture is so cool. There's just a lot of art involved with it as well there. So the goal was kind of just to make something that doesn't seem like it's from something that seems like more like natural towards it instead of, just words on a t-shirt. So I ended up collaborating with my buddy who's an illustrator. He goes by Bones Co. if you want to check him out. But he ended up just freeing up a bunch of sketches. And I wasn't really like coming at the project from such a creative aspect. So it was awesome to bring someone in, have a collaboration. I took his sketches, put them in Procreate, traced them, illustrated them, brought them in Photoshop, applied some liquify, and then, slapped them on a t-shirt mock. And so it was just super fun to make something that was way cooler. I was so uninspired before like working with a friend. So, that was cool. And now they're like for sale at the skate shop. So yeah, super fun. I think the goal too there was to, I don't know, make something that felt like merch. There's like, I'm part of a team. Here's the shirt order that we're all going to get. But like merch is kind of like a cool place to break the rules. Do something fun, do something limited edition, do like
I think that's important. Merch is a place to break the rules because like, yes, you have your brand and your brand elements that will always like stay the same. But, I can think of a lot of different scenarios where like people just put their logo on a shirt and they just move it into different places. And it's like, is that going to continually sell out?
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, if you're like Nike and you're a clothing brand and like that's what you do, then yes. But like if you are a business that's like, not clothing isn't your main thing, I feel like you got to try and think about, ways to reinvent your merch and like make it stand out.
Totally.
So I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Making it like some kind of like marketing piece that like it has to be memorable. People aren't just going to see a logo and just think, oh, I'm going to remember that, but they are going to remember the cool animation that went along with it or the difference in color or something. And then that's noticeable and that they can point out and be like, I was wearing this purple shirt, remember or whatever. It's like that.
Yeah.
It's cool and unique that it brings like those two pieces together, like mentally.
Yeah. Being like intentional with it. Cause it's a shirt. Like there's a difference between like free shirts that you're just like throwing everywhere. And then like a shirt that, that you want to buy and you want to have it be part of your wardrobe, not just like something that you wear to the gym or like whatever. So it takes a lot of effort and I don't know. Merch budgets aren't usually like that huge. So
that's true.
Oh my
gosh, I know all about this.
And you don't want to like cheap out on the blank. Like, if that's like one thing that I've learned, it's like, dude, the high quality blanks are like such a big deal.
That's true. Preaching facts out here. Liv.
Yeah.
Are you working on any passion projects or any kind of fun projects that you really like are able to get like creatively outside of the box with?
What am I working on right now? I'm thinking about my vegetable garden for the summer and I have like a limited amount of space. So I'm thinking about tomato varieties really,
Nice.
That's cool.
Big deal.
Yeah.
You only have so many spots. And if you get greedy and you plant too many, then
overcrop the soil.
They'll be tiny, and then like they taste different, Yeah, that's kind of one of my things. I'm trying to think of something else. I'm really trying to figure out style right now. So
did you have any part in the new Precious merch? Any designing or anything like that?
Okay, this is the perfect question. So I did not design any of it. so fantastically, awesomely cool, amazing
cool
design.
stuff.
I don't know that I have the like amazing merch bones in my body like some people do. But I did pop up the products on the shop, you know, like help do the back end
cool.
side of things where you're setting that all up. You know, adding like a blog, building the blog that we put posts on when we want to tell people that we just dropped a new merch collection. So in a weird way, yeah, but in a not weird way, no.
Sure.
So I'm like that weird behind the scenes like builder.
You gotta hand it,
person.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
How do you balance like work and just life?
You know, I think I just have to slow down, breathe, and then like listen to my body because I'll be like feeling weird, and then you're like, is it because you've only had coffee and croissants all day today? And
Okay,
like,
what do
you're losing your mind?
what do you mean by your body feels weird? Because like I want to know if I'm crazy. Okay.
Oh yeah. I
Because
guess.
Okay. I'll just say this.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about it too much, but
Yeah.
like I went through like anxiety like a
Yeah.
couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of it was like work stress related.
Totally.
So I remember getting like lightheaded. My legs, my arms would go numb, you know, and your heart is like your heart rate's up.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like what
Yeah.
do you feel when you know, all right, I
Yeah.
gotta slow down?
Yeah, so I think like it's kind of like, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me. And also, I'm so sorry because I know how that feels and that's not a great way to feel.
Yeah. We're getting through it though. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think it takes a long time to get in knowing yourself and like knowing your vibe check, like knowing what you need at the right times in order for you to be peaceful. And so I think, you know, when it's all coming down at once like that, you know, you're having an awareness of it, but like it's because like all of these things build it up. Now it's like, oh my God, like something is going on. So I think it's like little information. And I think if you can start kind of just noting this little information on the regular and then, you know, meet yourself with what you need for that thing. So, you know, I can't do too many coffees because I will get so much anxiety that I can't do anything. And so then it's like, you know, setting that limit for myself that I want to continue to like, you know, have drinks. Okay, I'm going to go with like a regular tea, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
it sounds so rudimentary, but it's like, so it's just like if you were, you know, dating someone and like getting to know them and like taking little bits of information, you know, oh, they love this, they love that. It's like doing that for yourself. And you're like, Noah, coffee bad. Too many coffee, Noah,
Yeah.
bad. And so then like over time, you know, you kind of learn to like, you know, respond to yourself in an effective way. And then as you grow, you just like, you become like indispensable to the fact where you're like, someone asks you if you want to go to some like thing and you're like, no. Like you just know immediately because it's like, that's after 8 p.m. Like I'm totally going to be doing my bedtime skincare routine. And so I think it's like a learning game. And like, you just kind of have to, I think breathing, whatever you got to do to remember to breathe is important. Some people like run. I did swimming when I was a kid. And now I realize like, I just don't breathe. Like I lived so much of my life so excited going to the next thing that I'm not breathing. So I think just like slowing down and then just kind of sitting with how you feel. Like I feel
good.
weird and just sit with that for a long time. And eventually, you know, it might pass by, but just being there with it like a little pet and it's okay, you know, just, yeah. Cause I think freaking out and trying to problem solve is like a default response for me. And a lot of times that just causes like more anxiety. So I feel like it's like the great melting, you know, we're all just like melting, you know, your skin is like we're melting, my hair is gonna get gray, like we're all melting. And so I think if you can like melt into knowing yourself and like knowing the things that you need and then shifting your environment like accordingly, you know, like you just kind of realize what works for you and then you're just like, no thanks. And it doesn't have to be so dramatic. I think I'm very in going through the phases of life when I was younger, it was always like dramatic, like quit this job, you know? And I think when you get older, it can be a little bit more like, I don't think I'm doing coconut milk in my coffee anymore because I suspect it's messing up my skin, you know? So it's like this long game. I don't know if that, does that?
No, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like sitting with your emotions and like feeling them is good. And that's something that I've reflected on a lot over the past like month. Cause like I noticed about myself, I would, and you guys probably would agree, I come across as this really happy guy all the time, but it's like, you know, I might come across that way, but
Yeah.
really I'm feeling this way underneath.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't have to like lie to people and say,
Totally.
I feel great today. You know, it's
Totally.
okay to have a down day and be like,
Totally.
honestly, like if someone asks you how you're doing, just be like, you know, today's been rough. And that's
That
okay.
honesty and transparency is what like brings people together too. Like, and makes you feel like you're grounded. Because I remember whenever I came and grabbed something from you, and I just asked you how you're doing, and you were honest and vulnerable with me, and we were going through like the same thing at the same time, which was really interesting. Because like, had anyone asked me, I probably wouldn't have told them. But like you telling me, hey, this is how I'm feeling, it made me feel comfortable to open up with you and say, hey, this is what's going on with me too. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Totally.
Just like being open and having those conversations too. It's like surprising how many people I've talked to recently over the past month have like been through the same thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about like how you're not alone earlier.
Yeah.
And that kind of relates to that because it's like, I think I felt like I was really alone when really it's like, actually, like there's a lot of people that can relate to you and they've been through that same like season, you know, or experiences. So yeah, just being open and talking to people.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think there's this like idea that like your feelings are going to be an inconvenience or like too much, you know, and there's definitely like seasons of life where maybe you're dealing with your stuff in an unhealthy way. But I think like no one's feelings are ever too much. And like, it's just, it's not, it's just, it's like, it's totally, it can be totally redirectional too. Because if you express that you're feeling like a kind of sad and someone's like, we'll snap out of it, whatever, you know, like that's information for people that might not care about you or like might not be healthy for you. And so, yeah, by just being open about your feelings and being open about when you're like not doing so hot, like it can help you really gauge like, you know, what's your environment like and yeah.
And the caffeine thing is like, it's so real. It's kind of funny. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like for me, it can be hard when I'm like really locked in, like at work or whatever, to like make time to like hydrate and eat and like actually take care of my body. And then that'll like manifest itself in other ways too. Cause like, I remember when I first started having anxiety attacks,
Yeah.
I like when I look back on it, it's like, well, I wasn't eating.
Yeah.
I wasn't drinking water. You know,
Totally.
I was just having like coffee and that was literally it. And so you bringing that up, I think is also important because I think as creatives, you got to take care of your body in order to get the best, like, you know, version of yourself to show up to work and to create and to also just like, you know,
Totally.
live and be, you know, be happy. So.
Yeah. And I think like the time that you lose spiraling at your computer because you need to eat a snack or take a break or breathe some fresh air or whatever, like it's always going to be worth it. Like if you think you don't have time or whatever, like it's always going to be worth it to take a break and take a pause. But those are like things like learning. Like you got to learn how to build yourself in with it because it's easy to think like you could do all of these things and then what's where are your reserves at and where are you at and like you are a part of it all and like the people that are paying you to work want you to be taking care of you so that you can do your best work, you know, like you're not, you know, an exchange for this work to exist. So I think just remembering that like you have to take care of yourself on that baseline like level of needs to really like be putting out your best creative thing. So yeah.
That's good.
So you were also talking about finding your style.
Yeah.
And I feel like we didn't really dive too much into it, but like, how has that been like trying to find like your style? Because we were talking off camera, like Western is something that you're leaning into. Like, what are some other things that you are like you're realizing like or your style, and how has that journey been?
Yeah. I think, just kind of the ritual of like having a co-working space to go to, like your friends are there, the coffee shop is like right downstairs. It's really just kind of been a fun like season of, creative self-expression. I think like a lot of times in my life I've been, insecure. I think everybody flows in and out of that, but sometimes like when you're so insecure, like you're not really concerned about how you feel in the clothes you're wearing. You're like wanting to like get by and maybe not be too noticed either way. But something that I'm noticing along with talking about how we feel is how the clothes that I'm wearing make me feel. So, I'll put on a pair of pants, super wide leg at the bottom. I just feel so powerful. Like it's a real thing. And then you go to a meeting and then like doors open and green lights change and winks and things happen. You just feel like you're like in a D'Angelo song, like walking through the city and like things are just like happening for you. So I think, it really like, I think it feels good when you can make a selection of something that you selected. And like, it's interesting how it's like less about like how other people receive you and more about how you feel in those clothes, and this whole thing being like a trial and error thing. But yeah, just having so much fun. I think my words are Western or, California gold rush. And then my other word is like utilitarian. Like I love like a trench, just like how I like websites, they need to look, function and like look really good. So I think I like that with clothes, like cowboy boots, like something that's like solid. And then what was the third one? I don't know, like refined or like sexy. Like I think you can be like girly or like feminine, whatever. So it's like choosing what your 3 words are, and then you can like, okay, maybe think about having one of those aspects in what you're putting together, and then mixing and matching those, like a little bit of, utilitarian, but then also like elegance. Like it's like kind of fun. Yeah. But it's also,
so cool,
I love that you said that. Yeah. I've felt that way before, like not in like a sad, depressive way, but like sometimes you just feel melancholy, like life's so serious.
Yeah.
And I've done this before where I'll just like get dressed in something that I wouldn't normally wear and just take a book out and like go read it in somewhere I normally wouldn't go. It's just like the mindset, like having control of something you can control in a moment and like create the environment around it, like makes you feel powerful. So I like that you said that.
Totally. Yeah.
I agree.
So who are some of the artists and designers, creatives in Des Moines and outside of Des Moines, I guess, that have inspired you stylistically in your work, in your outfits, and like just your life?
Horrible with faces and names, like so bad. But I think, I don't know, right now it's in this season of life, it's really like on a really macro level. I think it's, some of the my main collaborators at Precious, like Seth Lunsford, Tiffany Rasmussen, Brooke Summers, Corey Moen. I'm having a mentorship with Julian Hernandez. And I just think it's kind of right now I'm taking so much inspiration from everybody who's just going through it and making it happen. And I spent a lot of time in my life wishing or waiting to become, this person or who I always wanted to be. And so to be on the other side of that, where it's less daydreaming and more wearing that weird outfit that you wanted to wear, or wearing something awesome because Beyonce's dropping her country album today. Like, it's just so fun to be, play in, community, but then also like larger global happenings. But yeah, today it's coming from just like a really, community, like macro level of like people doing what they want to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we spoke a lot. Precious has come up a couple of times.
Yeah.
So what's your connection to Precious and how'd you get tied in there?
Yeah. So around the time I was wanting to jump into freelance, I noticed some new work in town, and I was like,
Who was that?
this is different. Yeah, like I am obsessed with like this community in this town, and I feel like I have a pretty good read on who's doing what. I was like, this seems so different, like a different, different thinking. And it took me a while to find out who was doing this work. I had to ask around, and I was like, this is a great sign. Like, this is really cool. Eventually, I think I found out it was Seth. Messaged him on LinkedIn, ended up going to the old Precious spot. And I just basically kind of, told him where I'm operating from. Here's kind of my portfolio of work. Love new business development. I love, pitching. I love communication with clients. Like, let's, do you want to do stuff? Like, let's make something happen. Like, let's just see what we could do. Like, let's get some business. So ended up just going to Precious, rented a desk there. And that's really kind of what launched, me into my freelance career, was being around other creative people. People come in saying they're having a terrible day and they've felt horrible all week. And then you're like, me too, just really helped me tap into my humanness. And then also just to see a bunch of other people with different skill sets and what they do professionally and how they operate. I think larger companies, older companies, they run the way they run because of it. We started it back then. And so it was very much this environment of people that work remotely for companies, based everywhere. And instead of it being this playbook of how things should be done, it was this idealistic view of well, let's take what we love from all of these and let go of what we don't. It was just kind of really eye-opening to be wow, these are a bunch of different cool people doing what they've always wanted to do. And so, join up. Yeah.
How's it impacted the way you work? I mean, as being freelancer full time,
Yeah.
but you still have a place, you still go to work.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I'm really big thinking, big vision kind of. So it's always difficult for me, authority sometimes and bosses and stuff like that. So I think, having a office that's dedicated, I don't go there and do non-work things. So just having a space that I know that's what I'm going to do. The mood there is going to be, everybody's going to be working, sometimes it gets out of hand on occasion, but you set a candle, you set a playlist, you set the mood to have a productive work session. So, I think I lost the beginning of the question though.
Just how's it impacted your work flow and just
Yeah. I think it's just been super helpful to have other people around me when I'm going through, the ebbs and flows of the creative process. It's I'm brilliant. I hate myself and I've never made anything cool in my life. Well, maybe we're getting somewhere, or you should have never said yes to this project. So I think just by way of being around other people that are also in the creative arena, you got to be vulnerable. You got to take down all your armor about I'm cool and I make really cool stuff, to be I'm not the origin of this. I'm just a compost worm. That's kind of how I feel, is it's you're not some powerful figure that just births these beautiful things. It's kind of you're taking in information about what was going on prior, what's desired. You're taking in mood boards. You're taking in what the temperature of today's world is going on, what's happening. And then you're creating something new. And so I think when I think about it in the context of I'm a facilitator of ideas and cool things rather than the beginning of it all,
right,
that just frees me up to feel just like any other person, I'm just a contractor. I'm not fixing countertops. I'm building websites. So when I think about it in that context and there's other people doing their thing, I think it's just been fantastic. Hey, can you have a look at this? Or, oh, I've been struggling so bad and this doesn't feel right. And I don't know why it doesn't feel right. And it's so fantastic because you've got some people that have extremely eagle eyes. Seth will see things that I would never even pick up on. And then you have other people that are well, I'm thinking at the high level of the structure going on here. And so to have a lot of people that have, 10 years of past lives at agencies and companies and brands and working with like huge global brands to like really small local people. There's just like a lot of different knowledge to like tap into and support and things like that. So I think it's just great to be working in the community where it's like it's a safe space. We're not competing. It's not an ego contest. And so like, tell me about your bad day, dude. Like it happens to all of us, and there's nothing that's too scary. So yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's just been huge. It kind of I had to like deprogram from like more like unhealthy, like shame ways of thinking to like be here now, which is like, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to get away from like mindsets that don't serve you or don't feel good. But I think it's always just like updating your computer, like updating your operating system is so important. There's always new stuff to learn. And like, if you feel like you're getting stuck or whatever, like it's not stuck. It's just maybe just do a little bit of refresh, there's always a new way to look at things, but
yeah.
Good.
This is kind of funny, but I remember the first time I met you, it was at the Old Precious, like, what was that building called again?
I think it was the Market building.
Yeah. So I remember Alex was telling me, dude, you need to come to Precious and just hang out. And I was like, okay, I will. Like, and he showed me the Instagram, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy, right? And then I remember I walked in there, and I was like really intimidated. Like it was my first time like kind of getting out, I feel like. And I saw Seth, and I knew like Seth was kind of the guy behind Precious, and Seth had long hair.
Oh yeah.
And so I remember he came up to me and like shook my hand, it was our first time meeting. So that was kind of funny. And then I remember it was like you, Seth, and Alex, and that was it that day. And you were sitting on the other side of the table. And I remember like Alex was like, so I meet Seth, and Alex is like, hey, this is Liv. And then you're like, what's up, dude? Like, yeah, I just love that about you. You're so like outgoing, I guess, and like very welcoming. So yes.
Thanks, dude.
Shout out to you.
I feel like I remember saying the same thing and being like, dude, yeah, like Noah came through here and like acknowledged every single person and like asked how every single person was. And then I was like, damn, like I was like, it took me a long time to get to that level of being in person. So it's like cool to,
And I feel like when I go into Precious, like I can be like too social because I know y'all are working, but it's like wired in me to like say hi to everybody and like talk to people. But then it's like, yo, okay, no, lock in.
No.
You're here to,
I feel like 99% of the time, stop in, say hey is always welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, always. Like I think there's never, we never want to be having the temperature of office where like that's not cool and welcome, I guess if it gets to a level we can like cut it off or like let you know, but I think it's always welcome too, because you never know if you're just like stuck on something and then like Noah comes through talking about something exciting, it's just welcoming the flow of everybody that's and we want to make sure that too, like if you were curious, wanted to say hey what's up, just like come say hey what's up. Like I don't think we're ever gonna if somebody's got to go to a meeting or whatever, but there's generally like a core of people that are there hanging out. So
yeah. And it's always cool to see y'all come to the shop and get coffee too. I always try to get pictures of you guys, but
I think you've influenced the wardrobe thing too. It's like if you are in Northern Vessel on a Friday, like you're gonna be seen. You might be photographed, so it's like you gotta.
Yeah,
someone's gonna ask you about your outfit.
Gotta pull up with the fit. Honestly, Northern Vessel should do like a outfit Friday and do like a post where you wear your most
fit
fly
check.
outfit. Yeah, fit check. Yeah.
Send this clip to TJ.
Yeah. Outside of design and web development, you do a little bit of music, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. My friend Marissa, she is a musician. Shout out Marissa. She's awesome. She told me about this thing called School of Song. And it's basically a songwriting workshop and I didn't read, but I guess you were supposed to have an instrument, and I just didn't, I was just there for the songwriting. And then like the assignments came up and they were like, what's your instrument? And I was like, oh God, like YouTube backing tracks that are super cringy that I haven't paid for. So it has like cooltracks.com in the background. But I always loved writing, but it never really found a place. So it felt like songwriting, something that's like coming from my soul, it felt like it found a match there. But yeah, I ended up taking that class, wrote a bunch of songs, made a bunch of embarrassing stuff with like a MIDI keyboard and GarageBand. But like it's like the coolest feeling ever to just make something because you felt like you wanted to make something, and then put it out there in the world. It did take me like a year before I like released the music into the world, but I just like the most gratifying feeling ever. I think when I went into it, I was like, oh, it's gonna feel so cool to put this out there. But in the end, it was kind of like, oh, I kind of want to make more music projects, so I just want to like free this one up, and so I can move on. So it was interesting how like it ended up just being like, like I want to let go of that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put that there. And it's also cool to be like, yeah, I said that, like I made that. Is that embarrassing? I don't know. It was also like, I'm not going to take opinions from someone who's not also participating in potentially embarrassing, like it's just like being in the arena, I think,
Yeah.
and just putting yourself out there and just doing stuff like that just feels so great. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you still doing that, or did you say that you were kind of setting it aside for now?
So I did post my little like a little double. It's called Tarot Fi. Worked with a music producer
Nice.
to help me make those songs, and then had another friend. What's it called? Master the tracks.
What kind of genre of music would you say like you fall under?
So I really like psychedelic rock, like 1960s, 70s, like psychedelic rock, like Donovan, like Season of the Witch. So really kind of like witchy. Mazzy Star, love Mazzy Star. My middle name is Star. So, it's kind of grungy, Midwest, psychedelic rock, I would say. Yeah. And now I'm kind of like, do I want to keep doing that, or do I want to do something else? And then also like, what did I like out of that? Like, what do I want to do? Do I like singing, or do I just like writing songs, or So I have no idea, but you're always just kind of grabbing little song tidbits things.
Yeah.
It's kind of a perspective on how you see the world. So
Yeah.
there's not really a timeline to writing songs, I guess. It's like when it hits you, I guess.
When it feels right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What are your goals for 2024?
I think my goals are for sure look good, feel good. I think, I want to be all there for every day and bring the best that I can. So that means, eating the right foods at the right time, getting enough sleep, having a good outfit that I feel good and that makes me feel powerful in. So I think that's a good, just baseline. Cause I think when I have those really basic things going consistently, that's when magic happens. So I'm not waiting for, the moment to be creative, just every single day creating the consistency, the foundation for really cool, creative, magical things to happen. So look good, feel good. What else? I think just leaning into more love, just love that feels good and is healthy. There's all different kinds of love, but I think, leaning into safe, what feels safe, emotionally, people are gonna help me, support me in, I don't know, the good ways. I don't want anybody who's dunking on me or telling me that outfit's not cool. So I think kind of, attunement to my own inner world and outer world. Cause I think when you're aligned with yourself, you're aligned. So I don't know, that was pretty rambly, but
No, that makes sense.
yeah, I think too, just stepping into my power. It's scary to allow yourself to be seen. It's scary to put songs out there and scary to be on a podcast. because I think you always feel like a work in progress. But, you know, it was like me when I was younger, I saw someone doing something I didn't know that was possible, and that opened the door up for me. So no matter how like not together or, you know, like embarrassed or whatever that I feel, you know, just owning that and being a model for like imperfection and that like,
Yeah.
you know, we're all just weirdos. So just want to like weirdo really proud. So okay, show a new example of how to be weird and okay.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well,
That's dope.
yeah, this was a great talk. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
We end the episodes going around the table talking about something that has inspired us recently. So who wants to go first?
I have a lot of stuff, but specifically, we talked about him a couple times, and we were gonna have him on sometime. But my friend Wes, he lives in LA. He's a songwriter and a musician, and now, as of Friday, official solo artist.
Nice.
So he put out his first single. So shout at him for that. It's a great song. It's a good song. But what's cool is like a year ago, June, he and I were sitting outside of a Starbucks in Minneapolis and just like talking about life. And he was telling me like about the song, but also like about like his plans, him and his wife moving to LA, and they did. He wanted to put out music as a solo artist, and he did. He's, you know, working as a videographer and editor, and he's doing that. So like just really cool stuff. And it's like I struggle a lot with like whether or not the stuff that I'm doing is like good enough or like on the scale of like what others are doing. And that just like comparison just always kills. So it's like always nice to see someone else like say they're going to do something and then do it. And it inspires me to do the same. So shout out him for doing that.
Yeah, that's good. Want me to go?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Volandes inspires me.
Oh, dude.
And yeah, so
Man.
Volandes is a photographer. Really inspired me, like right from the jump. Like when I picked up a camera, he was one of the first YouTubers I started watching, and he just put out today that he was diagnosed with leukemia. So that's like crazy. But he really inspires me, and it takes a lot of courage to like put that out there. So a lot of like love and respect to him, and yeah, like I'm praying for that man, because dude, like he really like impacted me. So yeah, and he still does. So yeah, shout out Volandes and praying for you, man. So yeah.
Mine is this past weekend Easter services. So I got a chance to watch a couple Easter services. So it's pretty cool to see everybody different production wise. Like some churches had full skits going on, and some churches were just super simple, but the different set designs and everything was really inspiring to me. So
set design is a very like, I feel like not a lot of people talk about that stuff, but when you like watch like, you know, music, like the set design is always something I look at.
It's appreciative. You see it on tours, the different set designs on tours, all the different churches, they have different set designs. And like you said, music videos and all that cool stuff. So,
I don't know. I don't know what inspires me right now. I think this is going to sound so basic, but just the weather. I feel like more sunshine, nicer days, not having to worry about staying warm is a relief on the outfits. I feel like, you know, you get towards the end of the season and you've been wearing that one coat a lot. So it feels nice to move through the seasons and, you know, figure out the new styles for the new year. But just, sunshine, happiness.
Get those tomatoes planted.
I know.
Yes.
I know, it's time.
That's cool. Well, thank you, Liv, for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this was another episode of the Creators POV podcast, and we'll see y'all next time.